There's a type of fasting that makes demons pack their bags and flee territories they've occupied for decades. While most Christians think all fasting is the same, hell knows better, and they've been keeping this secret from the church for centuries. What you're about to discover isn't just about skipping meals. It's about accessing a level of spiritual authority that makes the kingdom of darkness tremble with fear. The kingdom of darkness operates on one simple principle: to keep believers weak through their flesh. But here's what every demon in hell knows and fears. When a true believer enters into powerful fasting, their entire operation against that believer begins to collapse. Today, you're going to discover the 4 types of fasting that make hell tremble and why you must fast regularly. The very first type of fasting that strikes absolute terror into the heart of hell is fasting that you incorporate with intense prayers and worship. Here's what happens in the spirit realm when you enter into this type of fast. As you begin to fast and pray with intensity, your spirit man enters into God's presence. And when your spirit enters his presence, God begins to remove all the bands of wickedness in your life. The reason this happens is because Satan sometimes takes years, sometimes even decades, to plant a lot of evil things in your life. He's been working systematically to establish strongholds and systems of defeat, to build oppressions around your destiny. So when you go on a fast and begin to pray, every evil thing he and his forces had set up against you begin to crumble. In Matthew chapter 15, verse 13, Jesus himself said, "Every plant which my heavenly Father hath not planted shall be rooted up." This is exactly what happens during intensive prayer and worship fasting. Everything that the Father has not planted in your life gets completely rooted out. When you fast with intense prayer and worship, God doesn't just trim the leaves of the enemy's work, he pulls out the entire root system. Satan and demons fear this type of fasting because it wastes and destroys their years of hard labor over your life. Think about it. The enemy has been working for years to establish certain patterns in your life, certain cycles of defeat, certain strongholds of oppression. But one powerful fast, combined with intense prayer and worship, can destroy decades of the enemy's labor in a matter of days. There are certain situations that have extended in your life for so long, not because they're just natural problems, because there was a spiritual force behind that problem, and you know they can never leave just by simple prayers alone. You need fasting. When you fast and pray with real intensity, it actually removes and dismantles the spiritual forces behind those problems. This is why some situations that have tormented you for years will only disappear when you enter into serious fasting and prayer. Jesus gave us the key to understanding this in Matthew chapter 12, verses 28 to 29. He said, "How can one enter into a strong man's house and spoil his goods, except he first bind the strong man? And then he will spoil his house." The strong man Jesus is talking about here, it represents the demonic forces that have taken control over certain areas of your life. These demons have actually made themselves comfortable in your situation, treating it like their own house. But Jesus said, "No man can enter into a strong man's house and bind him unless someone stronger comes." In Isaiah chapter 58, verses 6 to 8, God describes the fast he has chosen. He said, "Is not this the fast that I have chosen? To loose the bands of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, and to let the oppressed go free, and that ye break every yoke." Notice that he said, to lose the bands of wickedness, which symbolizes setting you free from the wickedness of the devil. Fasting combined with intense prayer and worship makes you stronger than the enemy. It gives you the spiritual authority to bind the strong man and spoil his goods. The second type of fasting that sends shockwaves through hell is fasting that is full of praises and worship. Here's what most believers don't understand. Certain deliverances will only come when you worship. There is a supernatural power you receive when you're worshipping that you cannot get any other way. In 2 Chronicles chapter 20, when Jehoshaphat and the people of Judah were facing an impossible battle, God told them to put the worshippers in front of the army. As they began to praise and worship, Their enemies destroyed each other without Judah having to fight. The word Tehillah means praise, but it specifically refers to praise that creates such a powerful atmosphere that it literally changes the spiritual environment. When you combine fasting with continuous praise and worship, you create an atmosphere where demons cannot survive. During your fast, you cannot afford to sleep the day away to pass time. You cannot spend your fasting hours watching television or playing games. You must be actively worshipping and praising God. Every moment you spend in praise during your fast is a moment when the enemy's power is being broken over your life. The reason praise and worship fasting is so effective is because it does two things simultaneously. It weakens your flesh through fasting, and it strengthens your spirit through worship. When your flesh is weak and your spirit is strong, you operate from a place of spiritual authority that demons cannot challenge. In Acts chapter 16, Paul and Silas were beaten and thrown in